Hello, everyone, and welcome to our weekly discussion series that's hosted by the Chaldean Cultural Center in collaboration with U of M Detroit Center, Unique Voices in Films, and CMN TV. I'm your host, Wiam Nemu, and our guest today is Wafa Bunney. Hello, Wafa.
Yeah, hi, Liam. How are you?
I'm good. And, this month we're honoring all the special women in our lives and all around the world. And Wafa has played a very pivotal role in the Chaldean Cultural Center. She's been on our board for a couple of years and been volunteering tremendously, especially since we're moving. We want to thank you for that.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you. So Wafa is a retired IT executive at Ford Motor Company. Her 35-year career at Ford, included managing and directing global IT teams from Americas, Europe, and Asia. So, in addition to her job responsibilities, she mentored and coached future leaders in IT at Ford and recruited talent from universities um, across the country, right? Okay. You're
Absolutely.
currently a part-time consultant, a member of the Business and IT School Advisory Board at Lawrence Technological University, and a member of the Chaldean Cultural Board. You volunteer as a lecturer and guest speaker on leadership topics at Lawrence Tech and connects with faculty and students to grow their learning and networking skills. You're very busy, even though you're retired.
I can do so much. It's unbelievable.
And I know you have a beautiful family that
Oh, thank
includes
you.
pets, and so you're busy in many many different ways. And you have a very interesting history. You've been quite active since you were younger. You were born in Baghdad. I Tell us please about your childhood and what it was like growing up in Baghdad.
Yeah, I think I was lucky, honestly, in during the time frame that I was born. Baghdad was in fairly safe and not, it didn't have any wars. It didn't have any conflicts at the time. Just a little bit of background. My parents were born in Tel northern Iraq, and they came to Baghdad for opportunities, honestly, for education, for job opportunities. My dad was an educator. He really thought moving to Baghdad was really the only way for him to progress in his career. So as a result, I was born number seven of eight, but born in Baghdad. Most of my siblings were born in Telkef in the village north of Iraq. Um, I was born in Baghdad along with two of my siblings. It was growing in Baghdad is, although it was a safe environment at the time that I grew there, always had to be careful what to say. I was born Catholic and in a Muslim country, and you have to understand it's a double standard society. And as a female, we were suppressed very much. There's not much to do other than school and studying, and that's it. And I had very few friends really that I could befriend, and we have to be careful. My brothers at the time were in the United States. I really could not say that at all to anybody. I couldn't declare that I'm even Catholic to anybody. A lot of people would ask, but I have to say, yes, I am. But we had to hide our identity. And although we attended churches and it was safe to attend church back then, it's still, you can feel the discrimination in the country. And that's one of the reasons why I had to look elsewhere. My dad had planned that all of us would leave the country at some point, and that was the plan from the beginning.
Well, if you can't believe right now everything you're describing, how much it resembles the feelings that my family had. We had a brother that was in the United States that would send us letters. And I
Hmm.
remember when the mailman would come and everybody was so hush hush, like something
Hmm.
arrived, and it was so scary to say anything about the United States. I knew that I was a Christian, but I didn't know what it meant even to be there because it was You couldn't talk about your heritage and your culture. And there was this fear that I didn't even know we were living under until I came here. You had to see the other side
Right.
to know that
Yes.
you were living under fear. You can't say certain things. Everything that you're describing right now, and it's very hard for people. I think one of the things that I love about this program and our digital storytelling is people get to hear these stories that they're not aware
Mm-hmm.
were
Mm-hmm.
happening. We are not very, we're not very loud in expressing our stories,
True.
but then when we do, we see there's so many similarities. And your father, who I know is very, very dear to you, of course, but he served as a deputy minister of education in Baghdad. So I'm imagining he had a tremendous influence on you. But specifically, like, what are some of the things that you remember, the wisdom that he passed on that helped you in your life, because you have achieved so much as a woman, not just there, even when you came here, some of the roles that you took on were not very common for women, especially for you as an immigrant.
Mhm.
So what wisdom did your father pass on to you?
So my dad actually was an educator, as I mentioned earlier. He moved to Baghdad for better opportunities for job growth. He did actually come to the United States to achieve his PhD in education, and he took that back with him to Baghdad. So he was all about education, honestly. He not only influenced his immediate family, but he influenced relatives, friends, the entire community, not just the Chaldean community, but he really was very much into education, and higher education is better. And it's really, you can see that achievement through throughout the family. My siblings had at least a bachelor degree or master's degree. Most of them have a higher degree at the master's level. One physician, and for me personally, that's what I took from my dad. It was all about education. He said it's very important. You cannot go wrong with education. He himself continued his own education through, he was the role model for all of us. He had, I always talk about him, he had two dictionaries next to him even in his retirement days. um, Two dictionaries, English, Arabic, Arabic, English, and he would look up every word that he didn't understand in any paper or any book that he's reading, so that he can learn. And he was almost 100 years old when he passed away, and he was still learning. He never stopped learning. And that's really something that I will take to my grave. And I instilled that in my own family and any relative that I come in contact with, and friends.
Wow. My dad also, he was a translator and he was the head of the accounting department for the railroad station. And when you said about the dictionary, I inherited his dictionaries.
Yeah,
That
I did
old
too.
tape, that tape that they use, like, the yeah, I have all this tape around it to keep it together. But there was an Arabic dictionary that's in. There was actually two that are in like red, and I think they were printed. One of them was in Egypt,
Hmm.
and then there was the English. And anyway, so there was such a dedication. The difference is my father died earlier, but you had your father for a very long time, so he continued to, I'm sure, instill so much of what he has learned in you guys. And he didn't feel, your father, um, he obviously didn't create any separation with regards to education between the men and the women, the boys and the girls in the family. He didn't do that.
No, he did not. So this is the nice thing about my dad. He actually encouraged me specifically to continue higher education. I really, I'm very proud of him for not distinguishing, and it could be because we're Catholics. I think he really wanted the same for both his, the male and female children, to have the same opportunity, and he never distinguished, which I'm very grateful.
So, when did you leave Iraq, Wafa, and why did you have to leave Iraq?
So, as I mentioned, our goal was always to really be in the United States eventually. My dad had years and years of planning. He sent my brothers earlier because they're older. They came here to the United States for education purposes. And that was in the, I want to say, in the 40s, 50s. I myself was on the younger side of my siblings. So I the opportunity for me to leave Baghdad was between high school and college. So I finished high school, and my dad started the application process. I would have gone to medical school back home. But if I went to medical school, I would have been stuck back home for the rest of my life. That's how the rules were. So the only opportunity for me to leave Baghdad was literally between high school and college. At that time, my dad was not ready to leave. So the only chance he had, the only plan that he could come up with is for me to leave alone, um, and meet one of my siblings in London, England, where we actually worked on my immigration papers. And then from there, I could come to the United States. So at age 18, packed up my bag and I left alone. Went on the plane. It was only my second plane ride in my life. Went to London, met with my sister-in-law, who I've never seen in my life. I only knew her through pictures, Vicky. And we said hello. She spoke, of course, English, a little bit of Chaldean. I spoke, of course, Arabic and a little bit of Chaldean, although I understood Chaldean very well, but she could not speak it very well. And I had whatever English I learned from school. I went to Catholic schools, thankfully, because it existed back then. So I learned a little bit of English. Anyways, we were able to communicate between the Chaldean and the English, common languages that we had. And we worked through my immigration papers in London. In the meantime, while the paperwork was being processed, we toured the country. We toured London. We went to all the common places that tourists go to. It was really a great time, actually. I didn't feel bad that I left the country. Actually, just the opposite. I was really looking forward to come to my new country. I took my culture with me and everything I learned from my dad and everything I brought with me. But I was really looking forward to come to the United States. We stayed about 2-3 weeks in London, and then we came through Boston to Detroit. And that was the beginning of my new life.
And so do you feel that when you arrived, you embraced the American lifestyle? You did not have so much of the struggles that some other immigrants had to endure when they came here?
I was lucky again because my brothers had already been established here in the United States. So I had 4 homes that I could choose from. I didn't come and start, I didn't have to work to support myself because I had enough support. The family support was already here. So when I arrived here, just about immediately, I applied to schools. I wanted to go to medical school here, but then I learned that it would take me like much longer than it would have taken me back home. And the path to it was not really an easy path. And I thought, I'm going to just follow my own goal, my own passion of what I wanted to do. And that's the conversation that I had with my brothers when I first arrived, is where to go, which school to go to, and what to do next.
Well, and then you applied to Lawrence Tech. I mean, how did you feel that you have arrived to the United States? Even though you know some English, but you weren't fluent in English, correct? And
No,
here
no.
you are. Okay, and here you are, you're applying to college.
Yep. So my brothers were guiding me, and thankfully they were really great guides for me. They told me that I had to take an exam first. I took an SAT exam, and then they started looking for universities. I could not drive at the time even, so they had to drive me to any university I would go to. So they actually collaborated and came up with Lawrence Tech. It was not my choice, it was their choice. But it was a great choice actually for me, as it turns out. So one of my brothers took me to Lawrence Tech. I took my grades that I brought with me from back home, and they said, "Okay, you don't need SAT. You're enrolled." It's like, "Okay, thank you." Again, keep in mind, Lawrence Tech is a small private school. They'll take really students because they have demonstrated grades, and they suggested to me to enroll in English. I think it was English for foreigners, something like that. And I took the first semester. I took chemistry and math. So the story is, I wanted to go to architecture, and my brother one day came home. He had a recruiting company, and showed me a piece of paper that said pretty much the top 10 careers in the next 10 years. Um, and those careers didn't have architecture in it. But the number one was a systems analyst. I asked him, I said, "What's a systems analyst?" He said, "Well, I'm not sure really. Maybe something had to do with computers." Now, keep in mind, this is like 1977. So I said, okay. I went back to Lawrence Tech, and I looked at all their curriculums, and they had a math, computer science option. And I thought, okay, I'm changing my major from architecture to math, computer science. And that was it. I had no idea what computers were. I had no idea what I was getting into. And I just had to learn everything. So if you see the first chapter of my book, in my chemistry book, you'll see all the underlines under the words that I didn't understand. So I had my Arabic English dictionary next to me, translating every word. And that was the first chapter. Second chapter, you'll see a few words here and there translated into Arabic. But from there, I didn't have much of translations to do. I picked it up, thankfully. I honestly think the education that I had back home, although it was in Arabic, it was strong education that gave me that foundation to pick up the languages, the language itself, and the subjects in school. So math was easy, of course, for me because math is math. Chemistry, I picked it up after a while. And then English, guess what? I actually they moved me from English for foreigners to normal, regular English for Americans that same semester. They thought you're good enough to take that English class. So I did. It was English composition, and it was not for foreigners. It was not for English as a second language. It was for Americans. I mean, it was the same curriculum class that it was offered for everybody else. And I did fairly well. My first semester gave me that boost that I needed. I had straight A's in my classes. English was B, but still, it gave me that initial self-confidence that I could continue on with my education.
Yeah, the education. Well, here I remember when I came to the United States. I think I was placed in fifth grade, and I remember with math, I just passed everything because I had studied it. The stuff that they were teaching, I didn't know a word of English, and they were looking at my notes, my sloppy, all this notes that I made, and they couldn't figure out like how I had figured things out. But I had learned it in Iraq a couple of years before that. They were teaching us the very things that they were. So
Exactly.
the education system in Iraq, I have to say, it really is superb in comparison too.
Yeah.
So that gave you a very good foundation, it seems like. Then what would you say was the most challenging part? Did you in any way feel, so the language, obviously you picked up quickly because it was just a matter of dedicating your time and studying it. What would you say was the most challenging part of the whole process of coming here or even studying at a college that you experienced?
Yeah, I think the my surprise was honestly the first class I went to. I went and sat down, and I'm looking at the students sitting around in the classroom, and I'm thinking, nobody's talking, nobody's saying a word. What's happening? Um, I'm used to classes that are loud and people are talking, and you know how back home is. We're all talking at the same time. It's like so loud, but it was so quiet. It's like, Okay. I had to learn. I mean, just observe and learn, and apply. And that's really what I had to do. The challenge was it's the difference in culture. It's quite different. Um, yeah, the language was a barrier initially, but I was able to conquer that. But the culture, I really I was raised in a different culture altogether. So for me, it's really just about learning what this culture all about and how do I embrace it, and without really losing my identity. So that was somewhat of a challenge. Yes.
And then after you graduated, did you immediately start working at Ford, or was there a different job in the process? And how did you get to that position?
So I was told, of course, to recruit at the university for different companies, and Ford was one of those companies. So I actually had two interviews at Ford. But keep in mind, this was like early 1980s. So it was 1981 at that point in time. I was going to graduate. The job market was really poor. And But being a computer science, which I did not know at the time, being a computer science graduate was so unique to IT because at that point in time there weren't many programs or universities offering that program. So when I interviewed at Ford, actually it was Ford Customer Service Division at the time, um, I was like a catch for them because I had very good grades. I did graduate summa cum laude actually from Lawrence Tech, and computer science. And so I interviewed in the IT department of the customer service division. I went to Dearborn for that, of course, and soon I had the offer letter. So I actually started working a day or 2 days after I graduated. I literally had one day off, and I started working at Ford. So very early age.
Wow, Wafa, that is amazing. I didn't know that. That's how easy it was for you, but obviously well deserved.
Thank you. I just want to say one thing. I just want to inspire the girls out there that shy away from math. Or sciences in general. Just follow your passion. That's what I did. Honestly, I just followed. I loved math. I always was good in math back home, and that's what I wanted to do. I thought, if I go after the subjects that I like and the subjects that I'm good at, I cannot fail that. So that's why I excelled at it, honestly. And then computer science was just a natural for me. And Yeah, it was something that I didn't expect, but it was just going through what I thought was the right thing to do for me.
And Wafa, what would you say were your greatest accomplishments at Ford?
Ford was very disciplined environment. They had policies for everything. Of course, it's a 100-year-old company, so you'd expect that of a company that old. Mature processes. IT department at the time was very elementary, of course. So when I started at Ford, I was a developer, and Ford really offered the best thing that Ford offered was education, actually. So they actually forced us to take training about 80 hours a year, I believe. So at least 2 weeks of training. And so I took a lot of classes, leadership classes, managerial type classes. Some of them were related to IT, of course, project management, things of that nature. And I continued to grow at Ford. And as opportunities presented themselves, I just took to risk, if you will, for higher and higher positions at Ford. And I continued to apply what I'm learning. So it was really a great training ground for growth, professional growth, personal growth, and it just rounded me as an individual. Honestly, I mean, I would really not have gotten to this level of maturity and leadership if it wasn't for Ford's programs and Ford's education opportunities.
Now, how did you navigate through all of this with, you're married with children, your children now are adults,
Mhm.
but during that time, it seems like during that time you got married, you had kids, and did you continue working? Did you take some time off, especially with it being Women's History Month? Some of us, this is the thing when you have these kind of passions and you have the skills and the talents to pursue careers, but at the same time, all moms are like this, but especially like the Chaldeans, we're very connected to our family and just like to raise them the kids ourselves and things like that. How did you navigate through it all?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right about family. So I did marry early, and I was a Ford when I had my two boys. So I took some time off with each one. Only few months. I had up to a year actually for maternity, but I didn't take the full year. I only took few months. I really wanted to go back to my job. I thought I would be a better mother if I had continued my career and come home looking forward to seeing my children. But the most important thing, as you know, we our children's growth is important to us. So who would take care of my kids? So I looked very hard for a good home for them when I'm not there. So I was able to find good babysitters for them, in-home care for one of them, and the other one I actually hired the sitter to live with us. So I really was able to provide them the best opportunity. And then I enrolled them in school early on, so they were able to socialize as well, not just being taken care of at home, but also I wanted them to have the social aspect of engaging with other children their age. And it was difficult. I mean, honestly, I would tell you it was very difficult back then because we didn't have work from home opportunities, and I had to drive them to their school. My husband would help, but he had longer hours, working hours than I did. So most of the responsibility fell on me to take them to school, pick them up, drop them off, and take them to extracurricular activities. They're enrolled in different sports. I had to take them to different sports while still balancing all my job responsibilities. And keep in mind, at that point in time, I had very limited access to family at the time. My parents were still alive, but they were really elderly. They couldn't really take care of my children. So I was very much by myself. Um, Not, it wasn't until my extended family visited or came, immigrated, I should say, to the United States when I had additional family on my husband's side that started to help me. And that was a great, great help. I tell you, it was like a breather. And I took the opportunity because I had my in laws in the country to go back to school for my MBA. So that was my
Oh,
opportunity.
wow.
Yay. So I had two kids, young kids. I had a full-time job and I was going to University of Detroit Mercy for my MBA at night. Um,
Oh,
so
that is so impressive. I
all
was
that.
waiting. I thought maybe I was so happy they came. I could take a vacation. You're like, I could go for my MBA. Yeah, that is so lovely. Honestly, like listening to you, I liked what you said about how it was important, being a happy mother. And it's I think women that have certain passions, and when you try to oppress those and don't follow them to a certain degree, and I was a stay-at-home mom, but it still isn't easy because I was writing from home, and
Yep.
sometimes my mind was going crazy trying to like balance everything. But I tell you one thing, that I never let it go. And um, I'm so happy about that, that
Mhm.
regardless of what was happening, over time, something transitions, something happens, help happens. And I know that the times that I wasn't involved in my writing, or totally like if I neglected or just it was an overwhelming week, that week would not be my best. Like the
Mhm.
more I did steal whatever time I could, the better mom I was, the happier
Mhm.
that I was.
Absolutely.
So that does make you a better mom. And then the fact that
Mhm.
you continued pursuing, so I'm sure there's so much for that your sons learned from you about that, the perseverance, and then being able to juggle all of that. I
Yeah.
did not know some of these things about you, so I'm really impressed. And then here you are after, that is why after you're retiring, so you're not really like a retiring kind of person, obviously.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm always gonna do something. I have to keep my life busy, that's for sure. And yeah, my kids actually, my adult kids now look back at their childhood and they say it was the best thing for them for me to work. And I said, why? And they said it's because it made us be independent. We had to think for ourselves. My older son said, if I'm hungry, I had to go find some food for myself, and I had to learn how to get around or talk to people or get his whatever he needs done without his mom being there for him every time. So it
Wow.
actually taught them to be independent, and they actually thanked me for that. So I always wondered, when I worked and my kids were younger, am I really doing the right thing for them? But as it turned out, that's how they viewed it. So thankfully, it did help. It helped in many ways, like you said. It helped me for sure be a better mom, and for them to be independent children and grow up learning more about life than being told about life. They're actually experiencing it.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I know a lot of moms with very young children sometimes have that conflict, the inner
Hmm.
conflict of what they're doing. And I know that when they hear these words, it really helps them settle down. They feel like it's okay, and time passes and it all works
Hmm.
out,
Hmm.
for the most part.
Yeah.
Um, so Wafat, you said that you're still active. One of the areas that you're active in is you came on our board, the Chaldean Cultural Center, a couple of years ago, and you've done so much volunteer work for us. We're very, very grateful, as you know. Um, you know, it's one thing to have a job and you're getting paid for it. It's another thing to offer your time and your
Yes.
services, and the other way. What led you to get involved in the way that you did, and what does the Chaldean Cultural Center mean for you?
So I was approached by a family member about the Chaldean Cultural Center. I didn't know it existed, honestly. I had been so busy with my career, with my life, that I did not look beyond that. I did know about the museum because my dad was involved in that. At least I have heard of it, and plus I from family friend and friends I know about it. But the Chaldean Cultural Center, and I didn't know there was a board. So when I was approached, about this opportunity, I thought, oh, sure, absolutely, I'll take a look at it. My motivation was really more about let me see what this is all about. But the more I learned about it, when I saw the museum, it was so inspiring in such a way that I'm learning about my own culture more than what I knew about it. I mean, I lived it, but I did not know much about the background and history. And I'm so proud to be Chaldean, so proud to be Catholic. I say that every day. I'm really very lucky to be Catholic. Um, and if I can apply the knowledge that I have from Ford after retiring to for the board and the events and some of the efforts that the board is engaged with, absolutely, I would very much like that. Even when I was at Ford, I was always about people. I was always about mentoring, advising, helping people, and I just enjoyed. I get that self satisfaction from it, and to me, that's really about helping our community. This is our home, and we have to know that this country is our home, and we have to nurture it. We have to make sure it's going to grow with us, and it's for us, for our children and grandchildren. it's here to be nurtured. And that's really what I see in the board and in engaging with the Chaldean Cultural Center. It's been really a great opportunity for me. It's an eye opener, but it was a pleasure and very, very inspiring, for just not just me, but my whole family, and hopefully other families that are involved in it.
Yeah, you know what? I too, I know about the Chaldean Cultural Center. I know that there was a museum, but I did not. What I was introduced to it just a few months before I was hired.
Mm,
That I took a tour, and I remember when I took a tour, I felt the energy of all my ancestors appear before me, saying like, "We're
absolutely.
still around," right? Like it was
Mhm,
such an eye opener, and they were like calling out to me not to forget who I am.
mhm.
And I remember when I came home from that visit, I thought, "Oh my, where did I just go? Like, what just happened?" Um, we know that a lot of people are not aware about the center. A lot of people are not aware about the museum. We're trying to reach out as much as possible, and we try to bring this information. But for those who do know and maybe feel like, it's there, but they don't know if it's significance, what, why do you feel, in your opinion, it is significant for them to get to know the center or visit the museum, even if for once? I mean,
Mhm.
not even like we're not really even asking for anything, but what do you think, in your opinion, why it's important for their involvement in any kind of way?
So I'll answer it with my own story, of course. So thank you, Ria, for taking my kids and my son's wife through the museum. Both my sons were very excited to learn about our background. It's really for them, it's for our generations to come. It's, yeah, we are trying our best to preserve what we have so we can pass it on to our generations. That's really the message. You have to really see what the museum has. The museum itself, when I was walking through it, reminded me of back home, reminded me of my mom went through, and when I grew up. Even it was, there were all stories about me and my family. So it is about you and your family as well. It's all about Chaldeans that lived through the generations, and it's really for our future generations. That's really what I think is the most important thing about it.
And it was, even though I had written so much about our heritage and I had covered the news about it and such, but when I went to the museum, the kind of feeling I had is a deeper sense of really, really understanding why it's important to know your roots. I
Yeah,
think it's so
absolutely.
healthy. We often talk about our youth, and some of them feel lost, which is so saddening when you feel, because you just want to embrace them and kind of show them, to guide them. But as we know, the people don't listen to you the way sometimes a museum communicates, or a cultural event that you go to communicates to them. And I think that if they connect to their roots and see how rich it is, how like ancient and rich, and all the beautiful thing that it has in them, it could help them liven them up in a different way.
Right.
So, Wafa, this has been so great. Any last words? We're way out of time, but I just, the things that you were sharing were just too good. Like, I want everybody to listen to them, and I really thank you for this interview. But any last words you have, whether it's to the women of our community or just our community in general?
Yeah. So for the women of our community is follow your passion. For the community at large, you have to embrace the culture and embrace what we have put together in the museum and the cultural center for not just yourselves and your families, but also the generations to come. And it's very, very important to preserve and grow our culture in a way that brings all of us together. So thank you very much, Rian, for this opportunity. I really enjoyed it very much, and I hope this will inspire people out there.
Yeah, well, thank you ahead of time for the work. Well, thank you for the work that you've done in the past, but I know you're helping us so much with the move that we're doing. So I'm
And,
saying thanking you in advance for that as well.
of
Thank you,
course,
everyone, for watching, and have a wonderful day. Bye bye.
thank you.